Howdy all you delicious people, I'm here today to do a action movie double feature review. So, we're of course going on and covering the film The Fall Guy, but then we are also chatting about the film Boy Kills World. So, in all honesty, I had a hesitation about going on and talking about these films because it has been a number of days since actually sitting down and watching either of them. But I'm like, you know what? I just wanted to just kind of finally just break down and just finally talk about these films. And so, really, so how I'm going to approach this, because of course, if you are to be brand new for this channel for whatever reason, I'm to, of course, go on and really talk about both these films in a very vague, non spoiler sense at first, for probably way too long than I probably actually should be talking about either or of them. And then, of course, I'm going to go into full on spoilers about both of them. And I will, of course, go on into full on spoilers about the Fall Guy movie first. And then, if you have already seen the Fall Guy movie, or if you've already heard or got your clear consensus about this film, you can go on and fast forward to the point where I have the camera over to this side of the screen, and I'm going on and talking about Boy Kills World, and I am to take whatever is to be within this noggin to digest or dissect into a spoiler portion of review. So, with that said, let's go on and talk about both these films, but I'll kind of separate them nice and neatly. When really I could just say that both of these films are very much the same. None of them really care about story, or really there to want to like put more emphasis on comedy than real story. So, like, where like Boy Kills World is kind of like a mocking of story, where it's like, hey man, like you didn't come here for the story, you came here for the action. Where the Fall Guy movie is just kind of this kind of parody of what it's supposed to be. And it kind of reminds me of like the Airplane, Hot Shots kind of films. And really, you're just having a lot of fun with it. And it's this fun adventure film. And it almost kind of comes off as kind of a whodunit kind of movie also. But then you really realize how thin the cast list is for you to figure out who really done it. So you're just kind of really having a fun romp of this film. And so, in all honesty, Boy Kills World is to really just be kind of an ADD, kind of really, for every more you were to see Boy Kills World, you were to realize, man, like this reminds me of so many other action films that probably have a much better story and are to be much more satisfying. But more than likely, you could probably pull away with this movie just enjoying enough of the comedy, or to just enjoy the action enough to just be somehow satisfied enough by this film that you were to really have severely low expectations of it, that you were just to be like, well, like I had just X number of minutes to just burn, so why not check out this movie, especially if there is to be an app called Zeliphonic, Zelivonic, where I can watch both of these films for absolutely free. So, with that said, really, for the Fall Guys movie, there's one thing that I noticed in that film. We have the Tom Rider character, the Aaron Taylor Johnson character, who is also to have played Craven within that Sony film. In all honesty, when I was to watch the Fall Guy movie, I noticed that his hair drastically changes throughout the entire film. Like, at some points, like his hair is like very thin and probably had a wig. In some parts of the movie, like his hair is to be like fairly long, and at some points it's to be curly. Very inconsistent with that one actor. But I guess they really didn't give a like. I guess they really didn't care. But then when you also look at the Ryan Gosling character and the Aaron Johnson character, you'd realize like how like much their hairstyles do not look the same in this film. But like you're having actor and stunt guy, but neither one of the hair looks the same. So it's just kind of funny in that aspect. But so really this movie, The Fall Guy, is to be built on the two characters, the Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, two characters that are to really be the will they, won't they. Like, are they going to get together by the end of this, or is one of them going to get killed off by the end? And how are they going to play this all out when they have to go on and figure out a way to get this kind of confession out of this one character, so on, so forth, when eventually they figured out who had done it by the end of this film. And Boy Kills World, we have this kind of martial arts kind of reminder of a film, and really is to just kind of be like this kind of death wish revenge movie that we come to find out by the third act is to really just be like all of this effort all for naught kind of thing. And we really realize like, wow, like, all right, like I guess this is kind of a different kind of approach to putting together a revenge movie. But then by also the third act, you're just starting to ask certain questions of like, well, hey, like, why couldn't this character like remember this and that? Why couldn't have the girl in the yellow? Why did she do have done what she did? Why did they end this movie the way they did? Was there no other writing plans to just kind of write them off to the sunset a little bit better? But so why do they have to mock you and at some points give you a Chewbacca like character that is to go on and explain plans for a scenario that you are to not really give a rip about when it comes to plotting a plan of a caper? No one gives a rip about that. No one gives a crap about a gibberish character. And like, in all honesty, like nobody gave a crap about a Han Solo and Chewbacca in the Star Wars films. All anyone ever cared about was the Skywalker character and him just becoming a really cool, better Jedi by the end of all those other Star Wars films. Up to the point where he just became a non-existing character, it seems, and they transitioned to other things. Excuse me. But so, bless me. I'm going to bless myself. But so, really, like, you could probably go on and still somehow enjoy Boy Kills World, regardless of it mocking you at some points of its story. But I would have to go on and state that Boy Kills World is not even an okay, good movie in my eyes. I really just say that it's a bad film, and you're going to really go on and at some point click away to remember a better action movie and want to go see that instead. Like, when I was to watch this movie, I was like, man, like, this reminds me of, like, Punisher Warzone, with that whole dinner scene, or it reminds me of, like, any number of, like, Kickboxer, or anything. Just anything other than really wanting to plop down and fully immerse myself in Boy Kills World. But The Fall Guys, I would recommend going and seeing this film. Go into it with very low expectations to possibly just be like, yeah, this is fun. I enjoyed it. And so, with that said, I feel like I could really just go on and go into full-on spoilers about either one of these films that I have not gone on and seen in a number of days. So, with that said, yeah, let's go into full-on spoilers. I'm going to pause this video now to get the full-on cast list, and eventually when I have to turn around and do a review of the other film, I will go on and have to also do that again. So, with that said, let me pause here, and let me go into these films. By the way, I'm also doing on a lot of thumbnails, just a lot of upkeep, or just a lot of cleaning up to kind of somehow make thumbnails look questionably better than they may have been in the past. Just because of my kind of looking at them and just kind of going like, ugh, like I really don't like how this looks. So how about I go on and just put up something else besides that? To the point of me also just not really liking how I looked in probably a fourth or all of every single thumbnail that I've ever gone on and done in my life because of the way of which that I looked in them. Because now I'm much thinner, and at some certain point I was to not be as thin, or whatever reason, whatever, what have you. You can go on and look at any number of those thumbnails and maybe find a movie that you are to be much more interested about, or maybe you can go on and look at any of the thumbnails and laugh at them and just be like, oh my god, this guy is a stupid goof, which that is to be fine also. But either way, you could probably say you can see a number of movies that probably are not to have a playlist attached to them, because unfortunately I've gone through a number of kind of older videos and realized that a number of them do not have a playlist attached to them, but they should have been. But for whatever reason, a lot of playlists were disconnected. I don't know what happened there, because I put a lot of playlists on a number of things and somehow they aren't connected. I don't know what happened. But anyways, that's there. Check out all the old videos, because you're probably going to be forced to do that anyways. Because who knows when I'm going to get out the next video. But then also, really, there's a laundry list of other movies that are probably way more interesting for me to want to go on and talk about them, because I actually was fascinated or really did enjoy them. But anyways, like check out FX. Like it's kind of similar to the Fall Guy thing, and you may go on and even enjoy that as well. Or check out the movie Drive, because that's pretty much almost the same as the Fall Guy film, because it honestly pretty much is. It's very similar. But anyways, the Fall Guy. So we come to the very early stage of this film, and we have Ryan Gosling, who is playing this character called Colt. And Colt is to go into this area, and he is to be kind of falling from this hefty depth, and he is to, of course, not be at all focused on the stunt that he is going to really be doing for this day, but he is to realize that more and more that this is going to be his last stunt, and this is probably going to be his last chance to be able to talk to a girl who is to be Jodie, who is to, I think, be a producer at the point of this film. And this is to be the Emily Blunt character. So Colt is grabbing this walkie, talking to Jodie on this walkie, and trying to go on and say, like, well, hey, like, after this stunt is over, like, I'm peacing out to Cabo, or this kind of tropical island, for a number of days. Like, how about you and me sip some mojitos and have a good time, kind of thing. And we would have Jodie, who's like, you know what, like, that sounds nice, like, that sounds pretty interesting, like, I think I'll probably take you up on that offer. And then so Cole goes on and ends up doing this stunt for the actor who is to be, of course, Tom Ryder, who is Aaron Taylor Johnson, guy with the inconsistent hair throughout this entire film. But moving on. So we would have Colt, who goes on to fall this great distance, and he is to have broken his back horrifically. The point of him in desperation, instead of going on and doing an actual stunt because of his injury, he is to have gone on and decided to do a valet job, which is to be the always side job for every single character who is to not be the hero of the story quite yet in this film. They always have to have this side job, which is to be really just valets. Like, look at Shang-Chi, look at Blue Beetle, kind of in some ways, kind of very similar characters because they're to be in the superhero genre. But so we have Colt who's going and doing this valet job, and he is to, of course, get a call from Dan Tucker, who is to have been the guy, of course, that people would probably, of course, know him from the Black Panther films. And so Dan is going on calling Colt because we would realize that this other stuntman had just kind of fallen through. And we literally mean fall through because at a later point, Colt is to find this other stuntman dead in a tub. And then Colt, who is to just kind of vampire away from this scenario, to eventually to be on the news as this number one suspect for this other stuntman's death, killer, whatever, to really just come to find out that this is all just a smokescreen for who the real killer actually was. And like, I was kind of hoping in this movie that like we would have had our kind of Ryan Gosling character kind of be this kind of character who's in this like hot water, who is to have kind of made deals with the wrong people, and he used to have to go on and do all these stunts to kind of break even with all those characters. And like, that movie would have probably sounded very much more like cliche, like any other movie that you've ever gone on and seen in your life, kind of thing. And maybe this story is much better, but I don't know. Like, like if if a wheel really isn't broken, like, why replace it for that kind of story? But also we kind of have that story regardless. So Cole goes on, and he is to hear about this offer of this stunt from Dan, and he is to turn around and just be like, well, okay, I'm going to do my valet job, and I'm just going to do all these wacky, trippy stunts to get fired from this valet job because I have a better offer waiting on the table, which is to be this stunt job. So Cole comes in for Ryder yet again, and so we of course have Colt, who is to go on and appear in front of Jody, and Jody's like, no, like, I do not want him working on this film. That's a no. And Dan is really just telling Jody, it's like, well, hey, he's the only guy we got, like so he's doing it. So we have Colt, who is to do this kind of chase scene, and we have Jody, who has this kind of crane camera. Colt goes on, and he is to, of course, be racing his car so fast he ends up crashing into the crane camera. But they realize, like, well, there's other cameras around, so it's like, well, hey, they can just continue the stunt. And so Colt has to kind of turn around and do this really cool flipping stunt and do it the best that he can to impress Jody, because he realized that he just broke her camera. So Colt does a stunt. Everybody's wowed. Like, really, this scene just very much reminds me of the Ryan Gosling Drive thing, where we have kind of Bryan Cranston who's telling Ryan Gosling's character at that drive point, it's like, well, hey, like they told me that they wanted a completely different stunt. I'm like, well, yeah, but that's going to cost a little bit more money. So like I kind of got a little bit more money for you, but it's probably not as much as he really promised because he's been stiffing him throughout the entire life story of the two characters. Eventually, if you've ever seen the Ryan Gosling Drive movie, you'll understand eventually when they get there in that film. Drive is a really great movie. If you've never seen it, you need to see it. I think at one point I did kind of briefly review it in this one video where I kind of reviewed 20 other movies. Like at some point I should have separated Drive and done a separate review, like any number of other of those videos that I should have separated it. But I was just like, you know what? Like at that point I was just kind of like, you know what? I just want to talk about films and I just want to chuck all these things into one video, and that video went nowhere and I really didn't care. It's just like, oh well, whatever. Like anybody could go on and do their monthly review of all the videos that they reviewed in one video, but heaven forbid if I do it, it just doesn't turn out that well. Like a tier list. Maybe I should have done a tier list. That might spark some interest. I don't know. It is what it is. I make a lot of mistakes and I continue to do them by talking about them. But anyways, so it is what it is, folks. So we have Colt that goes on to do this other kind of fire stunt. He is to blaze himself on fire and is to be kind of smashed against this rock. And so we have Jody who's talking to Colt and is having to consistently tell this stuntman this story of the characters as if he is going to give a about any of this. And the more and more Colt is to go on and tell Jody that he's like, well, hey, I've never written a lick of any of this script, but yeah, I feel I can completely understand what you're talking about, and I think I can even understand more where these characters are going based on my experiences. And like we're having this kind of play of like them like talking about the movie, but then really just talking about themselves. And there's some kind of fun play between the two of them there, where we have Jody who's going on to state like, well, yeah, like our female character is to really just go on and to have realized that this guy had kind of left her in the dust, and so she had gotten her groove back and got into Pilates and gotten in really good shape and this and that, and is to have kind of had no real thoughts about that guy until being presented within her life now. And Colt, of course, is to go on and just be like, well, maybe yeah, maybe yeah, she was hurt, and like maybe like the two of them were hurt, like, and so like we have this kind of weird, goofy thing going on where we have them hit action again, and he does this stunt again where he is on fire and he smashes into the rock, and they have to go into more in depth about where Jody was in the past and where Colt is trying to make amends now, and so on and so forth. And so it just like becomes eventually to where we have Colt who's just like, well, I'm here now. Like, how about like we pick up where we left off, or just kind of give me a second chance now? And Jody is just kind of hoping for that second wind, but then again, like she's been so hurt from before that she's like, well, no, like I wanna put my shields up, and I want to just kind of like, you know what, I'm just like, I don't want to give him the benefit of the doubt just yet. Like, I think at one point he's just gonna like run away again. But then in the later part of the film, like Colt finally comes clean to all this when we kind of get to the boat chase thing going on there with the whole Miami Vice kind of flavor that we have in this film, where we have Colt, who's wearing the Miami Vice coat, where he has gotten that as his very first ever like show stunt thing that he is to have ever gone on and done. But so let me go on and break down this a little bit more. So we have finally, after the stunt has gone on and concluded, we would of course have uh Colt, who is going to this agent character, and we come to find that the agent character is to talk about like, well, hey, like we very much need Tom to come back, and you know what, like if he doesn't come back, like it's just kind of pointless to just kind of finish this movie up. So like, Cole, whatever you need to do, you have to figure out how you can get Tom back. And so that leads Cole to go on and just be like, well, okay, I need to find Tom Ryder. So Cole goes on and is to revisit the other stuntman's humble abode. It's like, well, like considering Tom was possibly last seen with this stuntman, and also considering this stuntman is not here, like there's a lot of suspiciousness kind of going on with that whole kind of thing. So Cole goes to revisit the prior stuntman's humble abode to come to find him dead in this tub in ice. And so Colt is just like, oh my god. So we get to a point where like Colt is like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? Should I get out of here? Should I vampire away and like possibly think that I'm going to be thrusted in cuffs? But so Colt is to go on and be in this apartment, and then all of a sudden Jody calls. And if we were to not only have like Jody in a prior like setup scene with all these kind of people running around and asking her questions, we had one girl who just came in. It's like, well, hey, should we have a character come in just to state how the third act isn't really all that good? Like, I thought that that character was funny. Like, really, like, we had a character that was just there to, like, just blow seconds off the screen because they just had money to burn. And that I thought was kind of funny. So, we had Jody who comes in and is wearing this alien glove. And Jody is going on and talking about how, like, you know, Cole, like, there's this one part of this movie where there's to be this split screen, and we all of a sudden have a split screen between the two of them, and they're talking it out about how they feel about this story and how it's kind of breaking down. And we're having like Jody and Colt kind of talking almost the exact same kind of thing of how they were talking about prior about the stunts, but they're really just more kind of breaking down the story a little bit more. And like Cody is talking to Colt about like, well, like, do you think that the alien girl can really trust this cowboyish character? And Colt is like, again, like, well, I still haven't read any of the script, but like, yeah, I think they should just try. Like, I think. And so, like, we have this goofy split screen thing where they're just really just kind of like making kind of fun of this whole scenario, but giving us hope of these two characters building up to a possibility that they're going to end up together. But so, Cold again is to vampire away from this humble abode after going on and talking to Jody, and is to continue his way to try and find Tom Ryder. To the point of Cody at some point making his way to Ryder's place to find all these weird, bizarrish post-it notes that are to be slathered all around this apartment. To have at one point the words of Jason Momoa, how do you, Mameo, how do you pronounce the name? Being plastered in one of the post-its. But so that of course ends up having us have Colt being attacked by, I believe, Iggy, who is to have this kind of sword, and eventually the sword breaks because it's kind of goofy stunt sword. It's not a real legit sword, and it easily breaks because of course it does. If you were to have ever gone on and watched the blooper reel of Thor the Dark World or any of the Thor movies, you would realize how numerous times the Mjolnir hammer thing would break consistently. To the point of almost hilarity how much the Mjolnir thing would break in the film. I'm like, man, like how flimsy of props those things are, but think about it. You would probably have to go on and have the Mjolnir prop being duplicated like 30 times to that one film, but then also you would have to turn around and mass produce a prop for it. So to eventually sell to the normal Joe Schmo whoever's. So yeah, so really, yeah, like you would have to realize like whatever prop they would really have for the movie is to probably be the exact same things that they were gonna eventually merchandise out for. One and the same almost. Probably not as good quality, but similar. But so, anyways, we have Iggy, who of course is to go on and notice that Colt is to have the Miami Vice jacket, pointing out like, "Hey, why are you wearing that Miami Vice coat for?" Which is to really just set up the whole boating action scene later on in the film. But so that, of course, ends up having Colt ask Iggy like, "Well, hey, where is Ryder? I'm kind of looking for him." Because this whole movie is riding on him being there, and so this eventually continues the chase on to find where the heck Ryder is, which of course happens much later in the film because we still have this kind of chasing thing going on here, which eventually has Colt needing to go on and find, I think, Ryder's assistant character that is to have been grabbed by these two men, and Colt is to be kind of chasing after them, which is to be this big, huge, massive scene where you kind of see him uh, kind of riding this kind of, it's almost like a Back to the Future kind of stunt. Or if you've ever seen any of the Back to the Future movies, you would see like Michael J. Fox having this like skateboarding thing on the back of this car, and like he's being dragged by this car. It's kind of the exact same kind of stunt that we have kind of going on in this scene here, where Colt eventually is to try and make his way to the front of this weird, goofy looking vehicle, which is to have this kind of weird kind of trailer thing onto it, which eventually is to have this weird spinning thing that we consistently see Gosling fighting this guy and they're spinning around in consistently. And while that is all going on, we also have Jody, who is off going on and thinking that, like, okay, well, like, I asked like Colt if he wants to go and like and be at this after party, but like my agent is going on and saying that Colt had already gone on and left uh to take his vacation. And so we have Jody, who's all for naught, and she is just so disappointed, thinking that, oh, like I thought he would have came and we would have made up and made out and made something. And so we go on to have Jody, who is all for naught, and is to be so saddened that she is to have gone on and spoken this Phil Collins music, whatever thing. I don't know if it was Phil Collins or it was a Genesis song, but still. Um, but so, really, if you were going to go on and do anything Miami Vice related, you probably could have gone on and, like, really done In the Air Tonight, but I guess that's just me. Seriously, you didn't do In the Air Tonight with a Miami Vice reference thing going on in this film? No? What a mistake. But anyways, one also really good thing about this movie had a banger soundtrack. How many years have we gone without a banger soundtrack in a film? Far too freaking long in my eyes, in my ears, my taste buds of music. To just generically go throughout a film and just be hearing some elevator music be playing in the freaking background that honestly wouldn't connect with half of the film and it would just annoy the crap out of me. Watch the movie The Poor Things and you would just hear like the screeches and skronks of just music that are to horrify my ears for life. But so let's move on. So we of course have Colt, who is to get to the one girl who knows everything about Ryder, and who is to have figured out exactly where he is to go on and be at whatever point in time of this Ryder character is to be. Like he has to go on and find some guys who know Ryder to get to him, and so like once Colt figures that out, that he has to go to this party and beat up these guys, and he has to wear this weird beanie and clothing to be able to do so. It's very strange. He then is to, of course, realize like, okay, like, but I have to run back to go to the after party and talk to Jody and make some babies. Hopefully. But by the time that Colt goes on to the after party, everyone has already left. So Colt is just like, mother, like, man. So Colt is to even want to try to think like, oh, maybe I can make amends. I could talk to Jody and just say, hey, yeah, I'm sorry. Like, I was downtown saving the Milky Way, and yeah, like brain check. No, so Cole realizes like, well, like there's nothing he can do, so he has to, of course, turn around, go to this nightclub, wear this weird clothes and beanie and Eminem gimmick or whatever. So weird clothing. So Cole goes on to go to this nightclub, beat up some guys because, of course, he can easily do so. To then, of course, go on and eventually find at some point in this movie that he is to be on the news as a possible numero uno wanted man for a suspect for this murder of this other stuntman. Colt had even gone on and let the police know that a guy had been dead in this tub in the prior part of this film, but by the time that Colt and these policemen go to this place, there was no one there in the tub, strangely. So Cole goes on to this nightclub, beats up these guys with these bottles, and so on and so forth. Doesn't slap them like Jake Gyllenhaal did in Roadhouse. Roadhouse. So Cole goes on to get this information of where we would, of course, find Ryder at, and this will all come full circle to eventually tell us that Ryder was in on this all along, and he had, of course, gone on to kill his prior stuntman to eventually have Colt come in to replace this stuntman, but we would, of course, have Ryder have almost killed Colt in the other stunt in the early part of this film also. So, like, for some reason, we have this actor that is just very jealous that these other guys are doing his stunts for him, that he goes on and kills them for it, which I actually thought was like a really cool thing of this movie. I thought that was like, yeah, like, that's really cool because if you really think about it, if the actor kills the stuntman, like, we could really just go on and just have the actor just say, it's like, well, yeah, I had to do all of my stunts because all of my other stuntmen were dead and whatever. So, like, we could really also have the actor that has taken a lot more credit of all of his stunts. And so we had a writer that goes on to explain why he killed his second stuntman. So they're at this party, and we have at some point where we go on and have the stuntman who turns to the actor, Ryder. He's like, well, hey, yeah, like, I'm sure you do a lot of your stunts, right, Ryder? And that's, of course, when Ryder is just like, so we have video proof of Ryder who has gone on to kill Stuntman. And so it is to be off of this cell phone. Evidently, Ryan didn't decide to put it on a cloud somewhere or to send it to a tweet of some person that he can most trust and have this be TMZ'd out somewhere. Oh no, heaven forbid. So we have Colt, who is to have this phone on him, and he is to be seemingly gunned down by all of these people. And he is to not have this ability to really have a legit gun on him. So he has this gun that has all blanks. And we also have Dan Tucker is with him, who is to have this kind of weird, goofy objects that he is to kind of just toss at these villains because he has no real weapon of his own. So we come to find Colt, who eventually is to be tied up and to have been beaten by Ryder and his men and whoever. And this is, of course, when Ryan is to drop all of the knowledge on Colt of what it all had really been played out here, to really have not only Ryan, but also Ryan's agent, like, be the real villains of this whole story, where it seems that, like, Ryder is the real kind of impulse person who is to kill all these people, and the agent is to be the one who's kind of covering up everything, or coming up with these kind of plans of how they can possibly get away out of all this. But so, to also really perfectly just say, like, well, yeah, it couldn't be Ryder himself, it could just be his stuntman because of how similar they look alike. So Ryder is to go on and tell Colt, it's like, well, yeah, like, I'm going to leave you dead somewhere, and I'm going to go on and just kind of deep fake you with your face over mine, and we're just going to have everybody just say that you killed the stuntman, even though there could have been a number of witnesses that all could have really just said within that party that, oh, no, Ryder killed this stuntman. But I guess video proof is just better than anything else. A deep fake is better than anything else. But so, like, you could have had, like, a tech genius just be looking at this video and just being like, oh no, that's obviously a deep fake because I can tell, because look at the cropping of the face and whatever. But so anyways, moving on. And we also had Colt, who is to, like, scan himself in, and he is to ask, like, his people, it's like, well, hey, why am I getting scanned in? And it's like, well, yeah, like, we just want you to get scanned in so that way we can replace your face with the Ryder character. And I'm like, why would you scan his face? Wouldn't you do that with the actor? Plus, also, like, it's not like the stuntman is gonna get an action figure anytime soon. Why would he need to really be scanned? Because really, the only time that I see people really getting scanned in is either to do a video game or to get an action figure. And I don't think Ryan Gosling's character is going to be doing either or. But moving on. So, Big Bad is Ryder. So, eventually, Colt is to sneak away onto this boat and is to be driving it backwards with his hands cuffed behind him. And so eventually he is to seemingly figure out a way to still be cuffed, but then also to be calling Jody, and is to be telling her the real legit truth about how when he was to have gone on and broke his back, he was to have realized that he was to not feel as strong of a person towards Jody, that he didn't, his confidence just kind of shattered, realizing that he wasn't the man, or he didn't think he was the man that Jody saw him most as. To where also, when Colt does kind of come back in Jody's life, Jody doesn't trust him also. So it does kind of confirm a lot of that, where it's well, if Colt would have came back the very next day, would Jody have been very much more trusting of Colt doing any other stunts past that almost injury point? But so Colt goes on and is to just say that he does kind of regret all of the decision that he was to have gone on and made, but again, it all came down to his confidence was shattered and he didn't feel as strong of a man, and so really a lot of what he is to go on and say here is really actually just clearly justified. Really, I can understand what he was going on and saying. Really, all comes down to confidence. But so Colt goes on and does this huge, massive stunt where he is to be all burst into flame and be upon this boat, which really he is to just kind of jump off of and get scot free away from, and is to kind of swim away into freedom. So the bad guys are all assuming oh yeah, Colt is definitely dead. We're not going to go on and double check and kind of double back and see if he's still alive anywhere. I'm sure he's dead, because we've ever seen any movie or show or anything in our lives, we would know that the guy is surefirely not dead. Look at the very first Punisher movie. That is not the Dolph Lundgren film, but the other Punisher movie, where you have the bridge, and the bridge is all or the pier, and the pier is all gasolined up, and they go and they throw the lighter, and the pier blows up, and the Punisher ends up getting flung into the water, and he's saved. That stuff happens all the time. Maybe not in real life, but it seems to be a thing that always happens in a film, where you're assuming, oh man, that guy's dead, and then here he's kind of swimming out of the water, just being oh hey guys, I'm fine. Of course you are, 'cause movie. So Colt is to go on, seemingly after all of that ruckus, all of that Miami Vice theme music playing around in the background, as well as also some really nice Kiss music and all of that jazz. Yeah. Just all that good soundtracking music that we have desperately needed in a film for freaking I don't know how long. So Cole goes on and is to now be sneaking away to Jody to tell her the truth about what all is to have gone on. And so he is to hide his way into this kind of full-on costume and make his way back into Jody's trailer to tell her all the truth. And so Colt is to sneak away into this trailer, and Jody is to come in within the trailer. And when Colt is to grab her, Jody is to just be so frightened, she is to start attacking Colt and stabbing into him and all kinds of things. And so finally, when Colt is to take off this costume, he is to be oh my god, you did a really good job, just beating the shit out of me and stabbing me. That was a really good job. So Colt goes on and to explain like what is all transpired in the time of which that she has not been present for, but he has lived through. And so Colt is telling Jody like we need to figure out some way of making Ryder confess to all of the things that he has gone on and done. He has to confess his sins. And so, because that's the only play that they have, because Colt no longer has the ability to have that video to kind of hold over Ryder. So they're like, well, like, what can we do now? And so it's like, well, we have to make Tom confess. And so, like, well, how do we do that? And so it's like, well, like, it seems that Colt realizes that Tom doesn't handle stunts all that well. So Colt is just like, well, hey, like, how about we go on and have Tom forced into a stunt that eventually he can't get out of, and that goes on to then have him confess about killing the people he is to have gone on and killed. So they're like, okay, sounds like a solid enough plan. So we have Jody who is to go on and say to Tom, it's like, well, hey, yeah, like, we have to do this one big last stunt. And we would, of course, have Tom who's like, well, wait a minute, like, is this a reshoot? What's going on here? And Jody's like, no, like, we really just need, like, some really close-up shots and this and that. So Ryder is to be like, okay, yeah, like, I'll whatever you need. Okay, sure. Like, even though he's really just like, no, I don't want to do any of this. So Ryder goes in the car to come to find out that Colt is to kind of make his way into the vehicle and is to start to take control. Driving off of this kind of treadmill-ish like thing, and we all of a sudden have all these cars that are chasing after Ryder. And of course, Colt's car. So Jody is going on and chasing these people with the camera, and realizing, of course, both Colt and Tom are both mic'd, and Dan is kind of in this van somewhere, kind of recording all of this. So Colt is going on talking to Tom, trying to get him as much as possible to confess what he is to all go on and do. And Colt is doing it in the most kind of un-nonchalant way possible, to just be like, oh yeah, your name is Tom Ryder, correct? Tom was like, what are you talking about? And Colt is like, yes, you are Tom Ryder, correct? It's like, yeah. And you have gone on and you have killed this man in the past, yes? And this and that, and so on and so forth. And so we would, of course, have Ryder who is to go on and obviously confess to these things while under duress with this whole stunt, possibly almost having a possible kidnapping. There's some flimsiness going on there. But so Tom, of course, goes on to confess, but then we have the agent who is to eventually go on and try and take the recording and run off with it off to this helicopter. So this all comes down to eventually them trying to figure out how like they can get like our villainish characters to eventually go on and eventually give themselves up, so on and so forth. All of this is to kind of play out with a helicopter chase that eventually is to have Ryan on this crane. And while both Colt and Jody are kind of chasing off to this helicopter, we have Colt who's just like, well, hey, like, maybe afterwards, like, maybe we can finally Like, we can maybe finally go on a date. We can finally work this out because both of them have, within the trailer, kind of kissed, and like they really realize that they're really good for one another. So Colt goes on and does the swing with the camera to make his way into the helicopter to eventually, of course, take the helicopter down and take the villains out and so on and so forth. Traditional way of kind of action movie and whatever, what have you. So eventually, all this leads to have us realize that we would have the movie entirely rewritten to, instead of having it be Tom Ryder in this film, we instead have Jason Momoa being the main villain of this this sci-fi story that is to have this kind of unusual name, of which that I cannot go on and exactly remember what it is. It's kind of like a weird like something storm, or God, what was the film inside of the film? Like Chrome Storm or some goofy name. It was some weird goofy name like that. But so the plan of this is we would go on to find that like Jason Momoa would have to go on and reshoot like bits and pieces of this movie to come to have him be the bigger star in this film. And so really by all of the end of this, we would come to also have the actors who had gone on to play in, I think, the show called The Fall Guy, Lead Majors, and I think some other actress were to have gone on and arrested the Tom Ryder and the other Asian character by the end of the film, which I think was kind of this goofy, fun thing kind of going on there. But so, really, at the end of this, we all have to realize that the two characters, the will they won't they, the Ryan Gosling and the Colt and the Cody, or the Colt and the Jodie characters eventually went on to find blissful happiness and so on and so forth, and everything just kind of worked out. So, really, as quick as possible, just trying to wrap this up, realizing that I've already almost talked for an hour about this whole entire film, and I enjoyed it regardless of how much I could barely remember of this film after seeing it from a number of days ago. So, with that said, I'm sorry about not how hugely monumentously in depth I was for this movie, but also realize that, again, it's already been a number of days since this movie has already came out, and also I'm sure a lot of people could go on and to probably just correct me anyways through any of the stuff of which that I am to have missaid anyways. So, and plus also, I honestly think for a lot of times that I am to go on and like once I kind of get to the third act or the ending of a movie, I kind of start forgetting a lot of things. I'm just kind of like, how did this movie end exactly? How did this all play out? But eventually, I feel that I kind of get most of the facts in there somewhere. But then there's also that kind of one thing that just bugs the crap out of me. Like there's sometimes where like there's movies, like when I was to have gone on and reviewed Identity, I think there's like one death that I just didn't remember like how someone died. But then after the fact, I'm like, oh yeah, like he was killed by Ray Liotta, and I was like, oh yeah, or whatever. But yeah, like it just kind of took me a while to just kind of remember how that played out. But like I really just didn't want to like go back and have to just like do a whole separate video just like, aha, this is what happened. I didn't want to take that time. But anyways, let's move on. Let's go into the other film. So, all right. Boy Kills World. Boy Kills World. So we would have this ritual assassination kind of going on in this movie, and really when it comes down to it, it's kind of a like a rich versus poor kind of world. So we would come to find this assassination ritual called the culling, which is to also kind of remind me of another of horrific events that we've ever probably had in our world, where we've kind of taken a number of people into the middle of the street somewhere and just plowed them, if you know what I mean. Probably you can name a horrific number of events and whatever that is probably lined up with that certain scenario. But so we would come to find that a boy had been caught in the middle of seemingly one of these ritual assassinations, where we would come to find that this boy had supposedly lost his mother, who had been grasping and putting together and cleaning this machine gun, and had gotten killed because of it. But then again, I say supposedly, because in the third act, that all changes. Because crappy story, in all honesty. But so we would come to find this boy that is to be placed with this shaman. And so we have the traditional like boy who ends up getting kind of kung fu trained by this shaman, to want to eventually come to this point where he's going to seek revenge against this rich family who is to just be murdering people because they can and they will. So, Nana, Nanny, and Mubu. So, we have the boy who reaches a certain adulthoodish age, whatever the age Bill Skarsgård is to have been when he is to have filmed this film. So, Boy, which it seems that's legitimately the name of this character, is just to call him Boy, which is fairly lazy. They even could have called him Mute, maybe, and that would have probably been a lot better, but anyways. Or just have made up some kind of name in the third act for him to have been called at some point. But anyways, he's just called Boy, and it's Boy Kills World. So, Boy is to, of course, grow up with the shaman, to eventually make his way into town, to find that this ritual of death is to happen again, called the calling or the calling. The culling or the calling? The cooling? The killing! They should have just called it the killing. It would have made a lot more freaking sense to just call it the killing. Because that's legitimately what they're doing. They're killing people. Should have just called it the killing. Jesus. So, we would come to find a Glenn Van Der Kooi. Man, somebody just wanted to just chuck some names. And so Glenn is going on and doing this whole speech that obviously is to be something that he did not come up with ahead of time, that he was to have forcibly had another character who is to actually been Gideon Van Kerkoy to have had this speech presented for him. So Glenn is going on and speaking this like kind of haiku, poetic, goofy speech, which of course I actually thought was funny. And so Glenn is going on and reading this whole thing before killing all these people in this road of this place, of this location. While of course the boy is to be kind of seeing like, oh my god, these are the people who have gone on to kill my mother, like I have to seek my vengeance upon them. But we really just have the shaman who's just like, dude, you're not ready yet. Like, you're not ready to go after them. It's not your time yet. Like, you aren't like Jean Claude. Like, you aren't Rambo. Like, man, like, you're stupid. So the boy goes on to watch as we all of a sudden have Glenn going on and doing this poetic speech of sorts, and we have this one person who is to kind of be like how in the Hunger Games we eventually have the people who are going and doing the salute to the one Mockingjay girl, which eventually breaks out in this whole riot situation. Kind of like the same thing that we kind of have here, where we have this one girl who is kind of being very defiant against these rich people. These Vanderverdekurts, the Vanderverdekurts, the Vanderverdekurts, whoever they are, very Swedish, even though they're not. That's how I'm going to be proud of their name. They're Verdekurts. They're Gideon Verdekurts. That's who they are. Swedish, it is. Anyways, I'm going into an accent that I don't actually have. Kind of. Sometimes that northern accent just kind of pops in every once in a while, or maybe an Irish one does, or maybe my gentleman vocal speaking of sorts whenever I'm to just bust that out every random once in a while that pops out of my brain for whatever goofy reason. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anyways, so we have this one girl who's defiant against Glenn, which forces Glenn to go on and pop off a bullet into this girl's skull, which eventually all of a sudden has this riot of them just kind of having to mass shoot all these people. And so the boy is just kind of hiding out in the shadows, just kind of waiting to see how this all plays out. And then, so Glenn is to go on and murder all these people. It's like, well, I guess we murdered way too much than we probably should have. But, well, does it really matter? Like, does it really matter how many people we really kill in this scenario? Because they're all just extras. So, we go on to have Glenn, who's collecting all these bodies. So, the Defiant Rebel boy character is to, of course, go on and sneak into this trunk to drive away with the rest of these bodies to make their way to this warehouse, where he is to go on and just be like, well, okay, like, I gotta learn everything, or I gotta remember everything that my shaman has ever said to me, and I also gotta have my imaginary sister go on to kind of motivate me to kind of help me figure out what the heck I'm even doing here, and also be the person who is to be speaking within this film if I'm not to go on and speak, because all I'm going to be doing is having this inner monologue with myself, but then also the inner monologue is talking to my imaginary friend, who is my younger sister, for whatever purpose that this story is to have. We even have it at some points where the imaginary sister is to go on and just be like, well, yeah, like, I'm going to be a butterfly ninja or a dragonfly ninja or whatever goofy insect that she ends up becoming. And she ends up just kind of dancing around as this kind of goofy thing. I'm like, yeah, that is a really kind of fun, kind of goofy idea. But, like, really, I'm just like, again, like, we're having it be a thing that's perfectly tailored for that character, but then also is to be like, but what was the point of that in the story? There was no point, other than just be kind of just fun and funny and whatever. But also to really just realize that more than likely this girl is to really just have a long night of shoots, so, like, give her one fun thing to do in this film, because she probably has nothing else really to do here. So, boy goes on to make his way to this warehouse and murder a lot of people. I say the word merger instead of murder because it sounds funny in my brain, even though really I'm saying murder, but still. So I like to say weird phrases like blued instead of blood or merger instead of murder because it just sounds funny in my brain. Kind of like instead of saying pterodactyl, we say pterodactyl because it makes no real sense because the P is silent. So, not saying that there's anything wrong with that, it's just legitimately people have problems with saying stuff. Even so have I on the live long days. So, moving on. So, we would, of course, go on to have Boy, who is mixing up with these foes, murdering a mountain of men, and probably women, I'm not quite sure. But so, there's to be at one point where Boy is to go on and find this side character, who, of course, is not quite easily shown upon the. Oh, I think it's Basho. Is it Basho? Probably is. And so, Basho, it seems, when Boy is to go on and find him, he is to be wanting to hide behind this cart, stating that he is to have had some goofy knee injury. And legitimately, it's like, oh, no, no, no. Like, hey, man, you go on, you fight all these guys, and I'll just be behind this cart, pretty much hiding. Because, like, I don't want to go on and I don't want to do all these fight scenes, and I don't want to, like, I'll get somebody from behind if eventually you die off, but you do all the heavy lifting where I'm just going to be behind this cart because my knee, because I have a weak knee. Oh no, and I also have a weak back and whatever. So we have Boy coming through, and we have this one guy that is to be this very sadistic guy, no matter how many times you break him and slice and dice him. Like, of course, the guy from the Monty Python movie, The Black Knight, where you would go on to, like, start to chop him up in little bitty pieces. But he's like, oh, that's just a flesh wound. Keep going. Like, we have that guy who kind of rolls in. And that guy, I think, eventually has, like, his own goofy name or something. But so, we would have Boy who dismantles that guy and just kind of moves on. So, we have Boy who goes on to make his way back to Glenn. And so, now we have to kind of question this guy for information. So, Glenn goes on to eventually start to get tortured, or to have this kind of vice grip thing kind of hovered above him, to eventually have these people kind of tease that they're going to probably drop this upon him. And so Glenn bizarrely is to state something about this dinner party. And Glenn is to also say that he's like, you know what, I'm going to actually go on and I'm going to help you guys out. Like, I'm going to change my evil ways, and, like, I've realized how many, like, mistakes that I've made, and this and that. And, like, we have this really come to Jesus moment to Glenn that eventually is to be all for naught, which is kind of hilarious in my brain, but then is also to be like, okay, that is to just be, it's kind of whole huge waste of time that this character is to really have as far as screen time is to be considered. But I think it's all to just be a joke, I think, for the play out of the film. So Glenn goes on and has this vice grip thing drop on him, and they're like, oh, that's too bad. He died. He was really going to help us out too. And also, we probably really need to have probably reconfirmed everything that he was going on and telling us, whether it is to have been true or not, or we really could have used this guy later on to just kind of help us out. But, well, he's dead now. So we really just have to trust everything that he told us, right? So we have our characters that are just like, okay, like, we have to go to this mansion, and, like, we have to come up with some kind of plan of how we can get in there. And so we come to find that that Basho is to align himself with a character named Benny. Benny is coming in, he's the Chewbacca character, and he is to have gone on and been the person who is to speak utter gibberish. So Basho starts talking about the plan, and Boy just turns to his imaginary friend, and they just start talking about what's kind of going on and transpiring here. And then Benny starts to come in, and Benny is starting to rattle off the rest of the plan, which he's speaking gibberish, so we don't give a really rip about. But then Boy is talking to the imaginary friend, and they're just kind of talking, and they're just like, seriously, like are we really having to really listen to all this? And this and that and so on and so forth. So eventually we really just have the boy and the imaginary girl sister who kind of concoct their own kind of plan where Boy is to make his way into the mansion by grabbing onto one of these chefs and strangling them and killing them and kind of just taking their outfits, kind of like the Hitman video games, if you have ever gone on and seen any of those play out, or if you have ever gone on to see the Hitman movie, or the sequel, or eventually whatever remakes or reboots that eventually they will probably do. Because rationally they should, because I would go on and I would want to see that. But so, legitimately, so the Agent 47 Hitman movies, because there's a number of movies that all say the word Hitman on them. Billions of them. There's a new Hitman movie coming out now. And it's not going to be the biopic of Bret the Hitman Hart, because at some point I think there should be that film. Legitimately. Because in all honesty, that wrestler, everybody loves that guy, but no one has to have decided to do a movie about him. How dumb is that? I don't get it. But so, and he's the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. But anyways, moving on, let's get back to the film. Gibberish. So, delicious gibberish, but gibberish nonetheless. So, we would come to find that they are to make their way into this mansion. And of course, like a very goofy, cliche-ish thing, when you would go into this mansion, that is to have this, like, truffle full or table full of these goodies, these treats, these snackaroons. We would come to find our boy character grabbing onto one of these cookies. He's like, yeah, because I'm sure this boy character probably has never eaten so well in a number of years. So, probably is just eating scraps from whatever the shaman was willing to have given him upon that day. And he has never gone on and actually tasted the sweet nourishments of treats. So, we would come to find a boy who is to be snacking on these cookies, taking a number of them, and then making his way further into this mansion to eventually find that there is to be eventually these people who are to notice that this guy should not be here. But eventually he is to go on and beat up a bunch of the people in the back end, the kind of the kitchen, whatever and what have you. And then eventually making his way to this dinner room where he is to go on to chop off the head of the very first woman he is to ever gone on and see. Realizing that every single person upon this table is to just all be actor replacers of the family, and to eventually have Gideon come in and just be laughing onto the boy, just saying like, well, yeah, like, I have been planning this scenario out for years of all these actors coming in to play my family, to have some rando person come in here and kill one of them or kill all of them and have us kind of turn around and snuff him out afterwards. And you are to play into that trap so well, so, sir. And so we then realize that the boy is like, well, like this is all going to be for naught then. Like I'm in a basket full of now am I? So we eventually come to find that this is all going to eventually turn around into having the boy being tied up, and eventually it's like, well, hey man, like you're gonna get killed, and like this is gonna end your story. And in all honesty, I feel if we would have had a bad ending of this film, like I feel like that would have really changed things. Like if we would have really just ended this film with the boy getting killed at the end, like I would have been like, okay, wow, like that kind of really was a short movie. But also, like it would have been less expected to eventually have the bad guy lose at the end, or to have the good guy lose at the end. It would kind of be like a rare piece of film. But we always have to have the traditional movie where the good guy wins at the end. But so, regardless, let's move on. So, if we've had, of course, Glenn, who has to have had that kind of come to Jesus moment where he has to realize, hey, you know what, I'm going to work for you guys and I'm going to help you guys out and this and that and whatever have you. We kind of, every time we have the boy kind of mixing it up with this family, it seems that every piece and puzzle character of this family is to eventually have their come to Jesus moments as well. So we have the boy who is going on and eventually seemingly going to have his torture scene with these people. And we go on to have Gideon, who is to start talking to the boy and is to eventually start to have his come to Jesus moment where he is to realize, like, you know what, like, my family has really gone on to do some bad things. And so, you know what, like, I'm going to kind of give you the tools and ability to be able to free yourself and to be able to have you get out of here and start killing all of my family off and eventually shooting me in the head and have you just kind of continue to run through my whole family and just finally like realize that this is the only real best solution out of all of this. So we have the boy who is to transition onto this weird late night TV show that this family is to go on and put together. So we now have to come to have the Hilda, who is to kind of be this very much loose cannon, kind of crazed woman of this family who is to now have to, because of Glenn being dead, needs to kind of be the face of this family, but really doesn't want to, because she's very crazed and very wild, and she has seen a lot of things and done a lot of stuff. Wouldn't recommend it. So Hilda goes on to now need to be the face of this TV show, where eventually it seems that she's really like doing all of the reading of the teleprompter, but then eventually she starts just winging it and is to just kind of wield her gun and just go on to start talking about all of the trauma and the craziness that she's ever gone on and been in. And eventually she's to go on and probably kill a number of other people just because of the willy-nilly just bloodlust of it all, I guess. But so we have her just kind of push off to the side and just be like, okay, like let's finish what we are to really be here for, and that is to really just see this boy character getting the justice that he deserves by going on and being murderously killed by all these weird, unusual, masked Scottish-like characters. One of them being this like weird-looking pineapple, this pirate character, a number of other weird, goofy characters that they just kind of randomly place in this snowish-like environment for some goofy reason. But so we come to find that the boy is to be upon this TV set to eventually come to find that there are to be two characters placed within this set environment that are to be like the Han Solo and the Chewie coming back by the third act, just going on and being like, well, hey man, like we're here to help you. Surprise. And so the boy ends up getting rescued to then join with his friends to try and kind of even out the playing field of all these other threats that are to be upon them. And so eventually that goes on to have one of the other pieces of this this family that is to eventually go on and get killed here, which I think is Melina van der Kooi, who I believe is actually the wife of Glenn. And so Melina is to eventually be like kind of strapped into this chair, and there's to be this crane camera that ends up going on to just slam, or like she gets slammed into this camera, and I think her head comes off. So after Boy's to go on with his kind of Han Solo and Chewie-esque like characters to make his way through all the pineapples and goats and goofy weird pirate characters and murder and mayhem them all off to eventually kill off Gideon, shooting him in the head. Having at one point where Gideon and Melina are to face off, and having Melina tell Gideon, it's like, why did you do this? And Gideon was like, no, like this is the best solution. Like to have this guy come in and kill us all is to honestly be the best thing for us, but then also is to be the best thing for everyone because it stops this whole assassination thing that we have consistently gone on and done for whatever reason. So Boy goes on to turn around to make his way to Hilda, who has been hidden away in this kind of safe house-ish like environment. And we even have at some points where the boy is to face off against June 27, who is to be this one masked character who is to have this weird kind of thing going over her mask that has these words kind of come up, where at some point it has like we don't kill children, or any number of other lines that kind of come across this person's face. And so eventually June 27 ends up facing off against Boy, and then eventually when Boy finally makes it to Hilda's place where he is to have finally seen her, and Hilda is to take a camera or whatever to finally see who this boy legitimately is. And it seems that only her and her alone knows who this boy really actually is. So, weirdly, out of everybody, because I guess anybody else could not have known who this person is. So, finally, when Boy makes it to Hilda, after going through all of these elevators where he is to have killed a number of these henchmen, or mercenaries, whatever, we finally have Hilda, who is to just be like, okay, like have the boy just kind of come through. We need to talk. And so the boy is like, okay, why? Like, what are we gonna come to some kind of conclusion? Like, is she just gonna give up? Like, is this gonna be a quick win for me? But so we have the boy who makes it to Hilda here, and here's where Hilda goes on to explain that the boy had gone on and gotten brainwashed by the shaman. That Hilda is to actually be the boy's mother, not some other woman that the shaman had brainwashed the boy into thinking was to have been his mother. And legitimately, we come to find out that the boy had almost gone on and shot the shaman and his family, as the boy is to finally remember. And so the boy is to then go on and realize, like, oh my god, like, I was to seek revenge of the shaman's family, and so now I have no, like, horse in this real race of me needing to go on and kill any of these people. And it's kind of very poetic justice to have had the shaman kind of go against this family in this fashion. But so eventually having the shaman appear to face off against the boy, to have this real kind of final boss showdown kind of scene kind of going on here. So we come to the conclusion that June 27, when she's to finally reveal that she is a woman, and is to also reveal that she is to actually be the boy's legitimate sister, not to have just been this imaginary sister that the boy is to have consistently been talking to, that is to be some ghost of some prior character that actually does legitimately exist in this story. So Hilda is to have pushed June 27 to kill the boy. And we do that all because Hilda is to just be like, well, yeah, like I don't know if we can exactly trust him. Like, maybe, like, he's not really believing what I'm saying, or maybe he's just too far gone. But so June 27th is to go on and feel that she is to almost want to kill her brother. But then, of course, her brother is to have remembered some little past thing that they are to kind of do together, to have June 27th just be like, no, 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 no. Like, you know what? Like, whenever I've always to have been with my brother, we've always ever had good times. And whenever I am to have been with my mother, I have just ever been miserable and had to have killed people, yada, yada, yada. So, having again June 27th, having this come to Jesus moment, because we come to find that June 27th, that's actually her name. I don't know why. Like, if she legitimately has a name in this movie, that is to not be what IMDb says. So, also, while I was watching this movie, I was like, why does June 27th look very familiar to me? And I'm like, oh my god, Happy Death Day. I was like, all right, like, uh, legitimately, like, I wish that this actor had a much more speaking role in this film. But I guess compared to the other actor that legitimately is the main character, who doesn't have much speaking acting role whatsoever, still. But so June 27th goes and kills her own mother, murders her own mother, and then we have the grandmother who is to kind of go on and kind of take charge and just be like, okay, like, well, like, both you and June 27th are now both dead. You're gonna have to run off and kill all of these guards and all these security men, and then you're to have to forcibly go on and walk off into the sunset. And eventually we have this kind of weird video game thing that's going on between the young boy and the young girl, who go off to this arcade, and the voice of this arcade machine thing is to be the voice that the boy is to have ever had in his inner brain. And that's how they just kind of finish off this film. Very odd, very strange, very weird. Just kind of overall film. But oh, we also the Benny and the Gasho character, or the Basho character. Yeah, the Basho and the Benny, the Benny character. they had both gotten kind of killed or gunned down, and I didn't go on and explain that whatsoever. Um, but I kind of figured that that's kind of where they were having those characters kind of head anyways, because legitimately I was like, okay, like what is the June 27th character gonna really do besides legit be the character that is to be kind of like the final boss, if not the shaman is eventually going to be the final real boss. And so we really kind of had like Benny and Gasho kind of have their kind of usefulness to eventually just lead to June 27th kind of coming in and kind of picking up the slack of that. And so yeah, so like that's how these movies just go on and wrap up for me. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about either or of these films, or any other weird opinions in between about any new releases films that you might go on and have me be interested in seeing, which more than likely, I don't know. Um, any things that I'm going on and possibly looking into in the future. There is a random number of just kind of either new release things that I don't know is probably all that really that good, but I'm looking into them regardless. Or there's some kind of much more older kind of films that I'm kind of just visually intrigued about. Then I just have to go on and probably question the quality of them. Uh, there is to be this movie. I think it's called like Baghead or something like that. Bag something. Um, it's to be this kind of horror film about this person who goes on and is to be having this kind of bag over their head, because we kind of find it that they end up being like several different kinds of people for whoever uh, they are to have a spiritual connection with for a number of minutes, and then eventually the monsterish person kind of takes over. And I'm like, okay, like this movie can possibly look kind of interesting. There's something about it visually that I think could be really good about it. Something I can just be fascinated by, hopefully. But then there's also just kind of like some baghead movies, like some Scarecrow things from 1988 that I'm kind of interested about, because it has some action and some horror elements, kind of like how Dog Soldier was. Could be kind of interesting. I don't know. It could be just something to watch at some point. Um, I don't know. I'm also kind of just kicking around a number of just kind of random older films um, that are to have bizarrely had some people go on to just collect them for some reason. I don't quite get why. Like the Flintstone movies. I don't know why bizarrely everyone is to have collected them, but for some reason people like the Flintstone movies. I don't get why. But then also, it seems that for whatever reason, there is to really have me kind of look at some other kinds of stuff that are to have probably been some new release stuff that I am kind of very way behind on. Like Across the Spider Verse could be something that eventually I'll maybe review. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, something I'm far behind on that eventually I should probably give my 2 cents about. And I've seen those movies, and I don't think I'm going to have a profound thing to say about either one of them, but meh, like, it'll be interesting to just kind of talk about them anyways. Evil Dead Rise will be a definitely a thing that I'll get into at some point, because I really like that film. Super Mario Brothers will be a thing that I probably will feel forced to probably review, even though I was just kind of meh about it. Um, But if anyways, like I'm just going on and just kind of talking about all this, when really I could just go on and just have said nothing about it, because I feel like I'm already reviewing all of these films right here and now. Um, Other than that, I think there is still just some oddball things that I still want to get to and I still want to cover on this channel that eventually I'm going to cover and realize what a massive mistake it was I even bothered to have talked about any of it. But there's a thing, that's the thing about this channel overall, I feel, is I'm going on and I'm trying to do something creative. Creative to really have fun. But then also, like, I don't want to be like every other channel that you have ever gone on and seen a review of, because I feel there's a lot of channels, and I mean a lot of channels, that are to go on and review the same things. Like all of them, like they all review like all the big massive movies that will probably get a lot of reviews and or a lot of views and whatever. But also like really like I feel those kind of channels are all just gonna be like no surprises like coming from them. You're not gonna be shocked by the next thing that they're gonna go on and put out. Like, but also the only thing that'll be shocking about the next thing that I put out is, hey, if I can even freaking put out a video, it seems at this point. But really, I just want to say that like I really want to find something that I'm really gonna enjoy, and I feel that is going to actually be a creative film and or show for specifically shows like however long I can go on and legit like justify talking about them within looking at the views, or also just to be like, man, I wish I could cover more of that, but I don't know what's going to be the best course of action, in all honesty. But, anyways, I think it's about time to just wrap this video up. I really want to thank everybody for going on and either hanging on to the channel or really just watching any number of these, because I realize like I always kind of question the quality of any of it. I second guess everything, and also I take far too long in between times to review anything, and then also I consistently just belittle myself. Yeah, that's a smart move, right? Um, but anyways, I'm just trying to do the best I can, and I'm also just trying to find the best movies and shows that I can rationalize my brain to sit down and see. Like I really feel that it's very hard for me to want to go on and watch a show or movie because I'm just so restless. And then also it's very tough for me to want to go on and want to turn back around and review it, just because I'm gonna be like, man, like I really want to pick a movie or show that I'm going to be completely positive about and just be like, yeah, like why hasn't anybody gone on and seen this film? And then watch the view count and just be like, okay, that's why nobody has gone on and seen or heard of this film. Um, but yeah, but that's the struggle of a YouTube channel, is anything that I would like, no one gives a about. But the things that I would hate, that's when it's the turnaround and it's like, oh yeah, I need to know that he hates it. And that's the thing that sucks about YouTube, is we can't all go on to a video and just like have just this positivity about it. Like every once in a random while, I will go on and I'll just do some random thing, and I'll find a fan base of people that are like, "Oh yeah, I love this movie. Like, Like it was a movie that I watched 100 times as a kid. I'm just like, wow, like this is like the greatest like comment ever. Like this is the greatest uh, experience ever. And then there's also the people that feel like-minded to how I was to feel, or maybe the exact opposite, which I'm just like, well, okay, like anybody has their opinion. And then also, really, my opinion of movies have really lessened over time. They forcibly have to. Just because I'm just like, man, like I can't say that everything is just dog garbage, poo poo, doo doo, whatever, because that's how I would probably really truly feel. Um, but then also, if I'm going to be saying that for like 30 to 50 films and not have a single one of them has some kind of shred of positivity, like I'm just going to live a miserable life talking about movies that I'm very much more hesitant about talking about. So, with that said, I'm just going to go on and I'm just going to get out of here. Thank you for going on and being any piece or part of this channel because I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.